But first, antisocial behaviour. When we talk about crime, most of us don't have to deal with knife crime or drugs. It's more likely to be antisocial behaviour. So, what can we do about it? Well, a group called the Policy Exchange have come up with a plan. They say that Citizen Police Academies should be set up to train the public in how to deal with antisocial behaviour. Now, the idea is that you'd be trained up to deal with aggro. It could make you feel safer. You could be taught to deal with all sorts of things, from how to perform a citizen's arrest safely to how to avoid danger when walking home alone. Sound useful? Of course, we'd all like to have a bobby standing on every street corner. Of course, we'd like there to be a police officer living in every community, but it would appear those days have gone. So we've got to think differently. So would you go on a course that would teach you how to look after yourself and deal with difficult situations? If you see trouble at the moment, what do you do? Is it cowardly to walk on by? Maybe you've been in that situation. What did you do? Is it cowardly to walk on by? And would you like the confidence and the training to get involved, or should we leave it to the police? 01642 225511. Let's talk to Mike Pannett, author and former police officer with the Met and the North Yorkshire Force. Mike, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I guess the days of the bobby on the street corner have gone, so we're going to start thinking differently.
Well, people have got to be absolutely aware that, like everywhere in the country, austerity has really bitten hard, and none more so with the police service. That we've lost some 20% of our service, and possibly more to come. But I always worry when the sort of government think tank, Policy Exchange, come up with ideas, and of course, it's they've done a big survey, and it's sort of revealed that only 6% of the nearly 1,800 people interviewed in England and Wales and Scotland would actually intervene if they saw something. And to be honest, you can't blame people. It's opening up a whole can of worms. And of course, the Policy Exchange is on about police officers training people in these academies, and of course the Police Federation have already said, well, we haven't got enough people to train them anyway. But really, what sort of confidence do people have when they actually do intervene? Do they end up getting in trouble themselves? What happens if they get assaulted whilst they're intervening? It's a whole can of worms. And I think everybody has a duty if they see something happening. I think this is what they're trying to do, is if the members of the public see something happening, should they intervene? Well, it is a difficult area. You see how violent people have become these days, and you see it all too often on television, and of course it makes them very afraid. I mean,
you have got training, Mike, as a former officer, so if you see some aggro now, would you get involved?
Well, of course. I mean, look, as I've written in my books, I've done it once or twice when I've been off duty, when I've seen dreadful things happening, and I'm not the type of person personally to allow things to happen, but you've got to use your common sense as well. You've got to be able to look at a sort of situation and weigh up what's going on. You can't just go jumping in with 2 feet, and you've got to be very, very, very careful. But what I would always urge is if people see something and they feel they're capable of intervening, it's how you intervene, it's conflict management, it's if you start laying hands on people, then you're going to leave yourself wide open to allegations of assault. So you can see it would make people very nervous. The best idea is make sure you modern technology, see if you can get some evidence, see if you can first and foremost get in touch with the police. But I think the public are all too aware now that with less and less officers, is this just another sort of great scheme of the big society where we have lost a lot of officers, and now we're trying to replace them now with members of the public. It really is opening a whole can of worms.
Now, what about this? I mean, the newspapers are saying, on this course, should people do it? I can't see many people volunteering to do this, but they would teach you how to perform a citizen's arrest. Well, is that still valid in this day and age?
Well, I think everybody has a duty, I suppose, if they see something that's not right. And it's just like if a police officer's struggling, I tell you what, I've been in situations where, when I've been on my own, or maybe there's just been 2 police officers and we're really up against it, and members of the public have come to our assistance, and I've been ever so grateful for that. But but you look at the sort of arrests, and I think the worst in the country, I think it was a couple of years ago, they looked at that in 2009, 2010, from the top of my head, there was about 3,800 citizens arrests. Now, when they've just done the survey, that's halved to almost 1,800. I think members of the public are very nervous about intervening, and I'll give one quick example. This is, unless the government are going to change their whole attitudes and the whole policies that they've got to prevent things. So where I heard recently there was some bullies on a school bus, and a young girl saw this bullying taking place, and she stood up to the bullies and ended up slapping one of them. Well, the next thing, the person she'd slapped, and in my view quite rightly so, she ended up getting into trouble with the police for assaulting somebody. So it's a very, very fine line.
Can you tell me, Mike, just briefly, how to perform a citizen's arrest?
Well, yes, that really is how long's a piece of string. I mean, if it's you see something going on where you've seen a 10-year-old person just throw a brick through a window, and you think, well, that's not right, and you take hold of them by the arm, immediately that's opening a whole can of worms because you've laid hands on. And then on the extreme, you might see half a dozen people giving somebody a kicking.
But do you have to use a form of words, don't you?
Well, that's a power of arrest. I think with citizens, they don't have to, when you go to arrest somebody, the police have to give them certain warnings that they're under arrest and they're entitled to legal advice, etc., etc., and they don't have to say anything. Well, of course, where are we actually going with all of this, Mike? I think if you look back to Robert Peel, he suddenly realised there was a lot of people who needed to be brought back into line. So the police service was brought out, and the police service was made to wear something visible so the public could see them, and it was their job and responsibility to be about and to deal with quickly anybody who was out of line. Now, as we know, like I've said before, we've cut back our numbers, and of course the government's job, the think tank especially, and it's the same think tank that came out and said recently police officers should travel to and from work on and off duty. Well, ridiculous. So, things need to be thought out very carefully. It's easy to say one thing, but, the reality is something quite different.
Mike, good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Mike Pannett, author and former police officer. So Mike has got real concerns about it, but it could be that he would give you the confidence. We all tend to come across these situations, don't we, from time to time? And I would be very interested to hear what you've seen and whether you think it's a good idea to get involved. Have we all got a duty to try and stop these incidents of antisocial behaviour? And the idea is that you could sign up to a course to give you the confidence to deal with that. Is it cowardly to walk on